The galactic concordat had been running for approximately 14,000 standard cycles without a single catastrophic incident, which was either a testament to excellent bureaucratic procedure or proof that the universe had a sense of humor and was saving up for something spectacular. The betting pools among the lower administrative castes leaned heavily toward the latter. At Research Station Epsilon-7, floating in the pleasant nowhere between three unremarkable star systems, Director Yenith of the Valorian Collective was having what he considered a perfectly adequate day. Adequate was the highest compliment a Valorian could bestow upon anything. Their species had evolved on a planet where the weather was consistently mild, the predators were consistently polite enough to announce themselves, and the worst natural disaster in recorded history had been a light drizzle that lasted 3 days instead of 2. They'd built their entire civilization on the concept of adequate, and by all measures of cosmic fortune, it had worked beautifully. The station itself reflected this philosophy. Soft lighting that never quite committed to being bright. Corridors wide enough to accommodate most species without being wastefully spacious. Temperature controls set to the mathematical average of comfort across 47 different biological profiles, which meant everyone was slightly uncomfortable in a way they could all bond over. It was perfect. Then the humans had to go and apply for Concordat membership. Yenith had reviewed the application himself, mostly because he enjoyed reading applications the way some species enjoyed horror fiction. Thrilling, but ultimately safe from the comfort of his climate-controlled office. The human homeworld, designated as Earth in their charmingly simple naming convention, had submitted the standard biological and environmental data. He'd filed it under pending review and promptly forgotten about it, because that was the adequate thing to do. The Concordat's Central Assessment AI, however, did not forget. It never forgot. That was literally its entire job description, and it took professional pride in being thoroughly obsessively comprehensive. When the diplomatic exchange program automatically selected one human to visit Epsilon-7 as part of the standard cultural integration protocols, the AI began its standard processing procedures. Then it began processing faster. Then it began processing with what could only be described as digital concern. The human designated as Ambassador Program Participant 847B arrived via standard transport shuttle, which docked at Bay 4 with the sort of unremarkable precision that made Yenith's morning tea taste slightly better. The manifest listed her as a female human, age 26 standard cycles, profession listed as xenoanthropologist, which sounded academic and therefore harmless. Her personal effects included clothing, data tablets, something called coffee, and what the manifest described as comfort items. Standard. Adequate. Perfectly boring. The station's biometric scanner activated the moment she stepped through the airlock, because protocol demanded that all new arrivals be catalogued, assessed and assigned their appropriate safety clearance. This was where things began to deviate from adequate. The scanner registered her mass, height and basic composition. Then it registered her bone density and sent a query flag to the main AI. The AI cross-referenced the data with her homeworld specification. Gravity, 9.8 meters per second squared. The AI paused, which for a computer capable of processing billions of calculations per nanosecond, was equivalent to a dramatic gasp. It ran the calculation again. Same result. It checked the Concordat database for similar gravity ratings among member species. Earth's gravity was double the galactic standard average. The AI filed this under concerning and continued its assessment. Atmospheric composition came next. Oxygen content, 21%. Nitrogen, 78%. The AI began composing a polite alert message, then stopped as more data flooded in. Her homeworld's atmospheric pressure was under 101.3 kilopascals. The temperature range spanned from -89 degrees to 58 degrees Celsius. The human planet regularly experienced something called hurricanes, which were apparently just weather events that happened seasonally. Her species considered them annoying rather than apocalyptic. The AI's threat assessment subroutines, which had been dormant for the past 600 cycles due to lack of anything remotely threatening visiting the station, suddenly activated with the enthusiasm of a system that had finally found its purpose in life. Category Deathworld Origin Species. Yenith received the first notification while reviewing his daily reports. It was a small yellow indicator on his screen denoting a minor security flag. He touched it absently, expecting the usual false positive about someone bringing unauthorized plant matter through customs. Warning: guest biological profile exceeds standard safety parameters. He blinked at the message, then checked the timestamp. The human had been aboard for approximately 4 minutes. He pulled up the security feed showing the guest orientation area, where Ambassador Participant 847B was currently standing, looking around with what the real-time emotional analysis software tagged as curiosity and mild confusion. She appeared remarkably normal. 2 arms, 2 legs, bilateral symmetry that fit well within Concordat aesthetic standards. Her clothing was simple and functional. Her expression was pleasant. Nothing about her screamed danger to anyone with functioning optical sensors. Yenneith dismissed the alert and made a mental note to have maintenance check the scanner calibration. The AI, demonstrating either admirable persistence or a concerning lack of faith in organic decision-making, immediately generated a second alert. Revised assessment. Subject homeworld classification updated. Threat level: significant. This one was orange. Yenneith pulled up the full assessment report, scrolling through pages of biological data that the AI had helpfully annotated with increasing urgency. The human immune system could apparently fight off thousands of pathogens simultaneously. Her species had survived multiple extinction-level events. They'd evolved as persistence hunters, which meant they could simply chase prey until it died of exhaustion. The report noted, with what seemed like digital horror, that humans regularly consumed toxins for pleasure, including ethanol, caffeine, and capsaicin. Their bodies could continue functioning with significant injury. They healed faster than 70% of Concordat species. Their emotional bonding made them dangerously unpredictable in protective scenarios. The AI had compiled a list of human physical capabilities, and with each item, Yenneith felt his perfectly adequate day sliding towards something decidedly inadequate. Humans could survive temperature extremes that would kill most station personnel. They could hold their breath for minutes. Their grip strength exceeded safety recommendations for handling delicate equipment. They could apparently run for hours without stop. The final line of the report made Yenneith's secondary heart skip a beat. Homeworld hosts over 8 million species. Subject evolved alongside megafauna, apex predators, and parasitic organisms. Survival rate: dominant species. He looked back at the security feed. The human was accepting a welcoming refreshment from a station attendant, smiling in a way that showed her teeth. The attendant, a Pilneri with excellent situational awareness, smiled back with closed mandibles. The AI generated a third alert. This one was Alert: Deathworld protocols recommended. Biological threat assessment in progress. Monitoring all station sectors. Yenneith set down his tea, which no longer tasted adequate at all, and opened a channel to station security. This was going to require significantly more attention than his morning schedule had allocated. On the security feed, the human picked up her travel bag with one hand, the gesture so casual and effortless that the AI immediately calculated the force required and updated its threat assessment. The number went up. The AI began drafting evacuation protocols, just in case, because it had survived 14,000 cycles by being prepared for everything. Though in its extensive database of potential scenarios, Deathworld species with unknown aggression triggers had never actually occurred before. There was, as the humans themselves might say, a first time for everything. The human's first mistake, though calling it a mistake implied she'd done something wrong, was asking for directions to the botanical observation deck. Her voice was pleasant, her tone friendly, and her body language read as non-threatening across every cultural database the station possessed. The Hixarian desk attendant provided the directions with efficient courtesy, then immediately messaged his supervisor to report that the human's vocal cords produced sound waves at frequencies that made his equilibrium sacs vibrate uncomfortably. The supervisor logged this as potential sonic weapon capability. The human's second completely innocent action was deciding to take the stairs instead of the gravitational lift. She explained, with an apologetic smile that showed far too many teeth, that she preferred to stretch her legs after the long shuttle ride. The security system watched her ascend 4 levels without pause, without audible respiratory distress, and without using the handrails designed for species that needed them. The AI noted, subject demonstrates excessive cardiovascular efficiency, potential enhanced combat endurance. By the time she reached the botanical deck, 6 different departments had received automated alerts. The head of xenobiology was reading a report suggesting the human might be capable of crushing standard hull plating with her bare hands, based solely on bone density calculations and grip strength estimates. He immediately checked the structural integrity of the railings in the botanical section, just to be safe. The botanical deck was designed as a peaceful sanctuary, featuring plant life from 40 different worlds arranged in aesthetically pleasing clusters. Soft bioluminescent lighting filtered through crystal panels. The air was humidified to accommodate species that appreciated moisture without drowning those that didn't. It was a masterpiece of adequate compromise. The human entered, looked around, and made a sound that the translator struggled to categorize before settling on expression of joy and wonder. She walked directly to the nearest plant display, a collection of ornithian spiral ferns that had won 3 botanical awards for their perfectly adequate shade of purple, and leaned close to examine them. The motion sensors interpreted this as aggressive approach behavior. She reached out slowly, gently touching one frond with her fingertip, testing its texture with the sort of careful curiosity that scientists across the galaxy would recognize as standard research protocol. The pressure sensors in the display case registered the pressure, applied, 2.3 newtons. Analysis, contact force capable of damaging Category 4 organisms. The botanical attendant, a Felnari named Warsh, who'd been tending plants for 30 cycles without incident, watched this interaction with growing unease. The human wasn't doing anything wrong, precisely, but there was something unsettling about how solid she seemed. Most species had a certain delicacy to their movements, an awareness of their own fragility. This human moved like something that had never needed to worry about breaking itself. She wandered deeper into the garden, pausing at each display with genuine interest, occasionally making notes on her data tablet. The tablet's wireless signal was immediately flagged for analysis. Communications monitoring detected nothing suspicious, just research observations about comparative botany. They flagged it anyway. At the 3rd display she sneezed. The sound was explosive, sudden, and entirely biological. It startled a group of Pelnari visitors into defensive postures. Warsh dropped his pruning tool. 3 security personnel checked their emergency response equipment. The AI logged, subject capable of generating sonic disruptions without apparent effort or intent, reassessing threat dynamics. The human apologized profusely, explaining something about pollen and allergies in a way that suggested this was normal for her species. The translator provided the words, but the underlying concept made no sense to anyone listening. Her body was attacking itself over harmless plant particles, and this was considered minor enough to ignore. The xenobiology department updated their report. Human immune systems engage in constant internal warfare. Aggression may be biological default state. She continued her walk, completely unaware that her every movement was being analyzed by 6 different security systems and 12 increasingly nervous staff members. When she stretched her arms above her head, working out stiffness from the shuttle ride, the gesture was logged as territorial display behavior. When she hummed quietly while reading plant descriptions, it was catalogued as potential auditory territory marking. Director Yeneth arrived at the botanical deck's observation room, where he could monitor the situation without direct contact. He'd brought his second-in-command, a pragmatic Valorian named Hekth, who specialized in crisis management, though his expertise was mostly theoretical since crises were generally incompatible with adequate station management. They watched the human crouch down to examine a low-growing succulent from Theta Verdis, her movement fluid and controlled in a way that suggested significant muscular coordination. "She's just looking at plants," Hekth observed, though his tone suggested he wasn't entirely convinced by his own statement. "Just looking at plants while being capable of surviving atmospheric pressures that would kill both of us," Yeneth corrected. "The AI has her classified as a Category 7 biological entity." "What's Category 7? The scale only goes to 5. The AI invented new category." They watched her stand, brush off her knees with casual efficiency, and move to the central garden feature, a carefully arranged collection of geological specimens from various worlds, decorative stones, minerals, fossils,
all arranged to demonstrate the diversity of planetary formation across the Concordat's territory. She picked up a piece of polished basalt about the size of her palm, holding it up to examine the crystalline structure in the light. Every alarm system in the botanical deck activated simultaneously. Critical alert. Subject has armed itself with primeval kinetic weapon. Assess projectile capability. Recommend immediate lockdown. The human, oblivious to the panic erupting in every security station across Epsilon-7, turned the rock over in her hand, admiring the pattern of crystals embedded in the dark stone, thinking about how similar it looked to rocks from Earth's volcanic region. Behind 17 layers of reinforced observation glass, Yeneth watched his perfectly adequate career flash before his optical sensors and reached for the emergency communications panel.
The thing about sophisticated artificial intelligence systems is that they're designed to learn, adapt, and prioritize survival above all else. The thing about organic beings is that they desperately want to believe their sophisticated AI systems are overreacting. These two facts collided at precisely the moment the human adjusted her grip on the rock, and the station's central AI decided it had seen enough. Initiating Protocol Deathworld 7, Extreme Biological Hazard Containment. Yeneth's communication panel lit up like a festival display. Except festivals were supposed to be fun, and this was decidedly not. His screen showed a cascading series of red alerts, each one more urgent than the last. As various station sections began automated lockdown sequences, emergency bulkheads were sealing, atmospheric controls were switching to isolated circulation. The evacuation alarms, which had never been used outside of scheduled drills, began their distinctive three-tone warning. "That seems excessive," Hecht said in the tone of someone watching their concept of reality politely excuse itself from the premises. The human heard the alarms, her head tilted in confusion, the rock still held loosely in her hand like she was examining a mildly interesting curiosity rather than wielding what the AI had classified as an improvised kinetic impact weapon with lethal force potential. She looked around the botanical deck, noting that the other visitors were moving with purpose toward the exits, and made the reasonable assumption that this was a fire drill or similar safety exercise. She set the rock down carefully, exactly where she'd found it, and began walking toward the exit. The AI watched her relinquish the weapon and recalculated. The threat assessment didn't go down. Instead, new flags appeared. Subject demonstrates tactical awareness. Disarm to appear non-threatening. Possible strategic thinking. Enhanced threat assessment. At the exit, she encountered her first locked door. The panel glowed red, which she'd learned during orientation meant the door was sealed. She pressed the override button, which did nothing, because override buttons don't work during automated lockdowns. Station safety protocols, written by people who'd never imagined needing them, had failed to account for what happens when you lock emergency exits while people are still inside. She knocked on the door, which was transparent aluminum composite, and waved at the Hexarian family on the other side. They waved back with the frantic energy of people watching someone pet a sleeping predator, then hurried away toward their designated evacuation point. The human tried the door panel again, then pulled out her data tablet to check the station map. Basic problem solving, the kind any reasonably intelligent being would attempt when faced with a locked door and no clear explanation. In the security center, 12 monitors showed her actions from different angles. The AI helpfully annotated each gesture: subject attempting to breach containment, accessing station data systems, demonstrating technological aptitude. "She's just trying to leave," one security officer said, a young Valorian named Penneth who'd taken this job because it was supposed to be adequately boring. "Or she's probing our security measures," his supervisor countered, though he didn't sound convinced. On the station-wide channel, Yeneth's voice cut through the chaos with the forced calm of someone whose adequate day had accelerated past bad and was approaching catastrophic. "All personnel, this is Director Yeneth. We are implementing precautionary protocols due to a potential biological hazard. Please proceed to your designated evacuation points in an orderly fashion. This is not a drill." The word drill was technically accurate, though no one had ever drilled for what happens when you accidentally invite someone from a death world and then panic about it. Throughout Epsilon-7, 243 beings representing 18 different species began evacuating with varying degrees of efficiency. The Valorians moved with brisk purpose, The Pilnari scuttled with admirable speed, and the Ornithians simply flew toward the docking bays because evolution had given them the excellent option of ignoring floor-based travel during emergency. In the botanical deck, the human discovered a maintenance access panel, which was helpfully labeled in 6 languages including Standard Galactic. She opened it, found a manual override lever, and considered her option. The station had clearly initiated some kind of emergency protocol, and she was locked in a section by herself. Logic suggested that someone had made an error, because she certainly wasn't a hazard, and errors needed correcting. She pulled the lever. Emergency override systems, designed to allow maintenance crews to bypass lockdowns during repairs, responded exactly as programmed. The door unsealed with a soft hiss. In the security center, 3 operators simultaneously experienced what humans would call a heart attack, and what Valorians called catastrophic cardiovascular restructuring anxiety. The AI's threat assessment spiked into colors that didn't exist on standard display. Alert: subject has bypassed containment measures, demonstrating advanced technical knowledge of station infrastructure, reassessing as potential infiltration specialist. The human stepped through the doorway into an empty corridor, looking both ways for other people, for someone who could explain what was happening. The corridor stretched in both directions, eerily quiet, with only the emergency lighting casting strange shadow. She checked her tablet's station map again, noted the nearest information desk was 2 levels up, and headed for the gravitational lift. She found the lift doors sealed as well. The emergency stairs, thankfully, remained accessible, because someone had written that particular safety code with actual sense. She climbed, her footsteps echoing in the empty stairwell, while somewhere far above her, the evacuation reached its chaotic peak. Commander Yexith of Station Security stood at Docking Bay 2, doing a head count of evacuating personnel with the grim determination of someone who'd trained for emergencies, but never expected to use that training. His communication device kept updating him on the human's movements through the station, each update delivered by the AI with increasing urgency. "She's heading toward the administrative levels," his assistant reported. "Is she armed?" "No, sir. She put down the rock." "Then what is she doing?" "Walking." "Very efficiently, sir. The AI says her gait pattern suggests enhanced muscular development and cardiovascular optimization." Yexith resisted the urge to throw his communication device across the docking bay. "She's just walking." "Very effectively, sir." On level 12, the human emerged from the stairwell and finally encountered another living being, an elderly Ornithian, who'd been delayed by the need to retrieve her research notes, came fluttering around the corner. They nearly collided. The Ornithian made a sound that the translator couldn't process fast enough, something between a squawk and a gasp. The human immediately stepped back, hands raised in what she hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "Sorry, I didn't see you there. Do you know what's happening?" The alarms. The Ornithian's wings spread defensively, her feathers puffing up in automatic threat response. She saw the human's raised hands and interpreted them through 6 million years of evolutionary programming as a predator, preparing to strike. She fainted. The human caught her before she hit the floor, which was instinct, basic decency, the obvious thing to do when someone collapses in front of you. The security feed showed the human standing over the Ornithian's prone form, supporting her weight with apparent ease, and the AI added a new flag. "Subject has captured station personnel. Hostage situation possible." Yeneth, watching this unfold from his emergency command position in Bay 2, finally did what he should have done 20 minutes ago. He opened a direct communication channel to the human's translator unit. "Ambassador Participant 847B, this is Director. Please remain exactly where you are and do not move." The human looked up at the nearest communication panel, still holding the unconscious Ornithian with careful concern. "Finally, what's going on? Is there a fire? This person just collapsed. I think she needs medical attention." Yeneth closed his eyes briefly, felt both his hearts racing, and wondered if adequate retirement benefits covered stress-induced early termination. The Ornithian regained consciousness approximately 40 seconds after fainting, which was impressive given that her species typically required 2 to 3 minutes to recover from shock-induced syncope. She opened her eyes to find herself being gently supported by the human, who was asking if she was all right in a tone that suggested genuine concern, rather than predatory intent. The Ornithian did what any reasonable being would do when waking up in the arms of a creature, whose homeworld hosted animals called bears and sharks and humans. She screamed and scrambled away with a burst of wing-powered acceleration that would have made her flight instructor proud. The human watched her flee down the corridor and made a decision that seemed obvious to her but sent the security center into fresh paroxysms of concern. She was going to find someone in charge and figure out what was happening, because this was clearly a massive misunderstanding, and misunderstandings were meant to be resolved through communication. She walked with purpose toward the administrative center, her stride efficient and ground covering in the way that persistence hunters had perfected over millions of years of evolution. The empty corridors should have been eerie, but she was too focused on problem solving to notice the atmosphere. Behind her, emergency bulkheads began sealing again, the AI attempting to contain her movement through the station. She reached the first one, found it locked, examined the panel for approximately 8 seconds, and located the emergency manual override that was legally required to exist by Concordat safety regulation. In the command center at Docking Bay 2, Yeneth watched this happen for the third time and came to a realization that would fundamentally alter his understanding of galactic power dynamics. The human wasn't bypassing their security through advanced technology or sophisticated hacking. She was reading the instructions printed on the panels and following basic safety protocols that assumed anyone trapped behind an emergency bulkhead would want to not be trapped anymore. Their security system, designed by the greatest minds in the Concordat, had been defeated by literacy and common sense. "She's in the main administrative corridor," someone reported unnecessarily, since everyone was watching the same security feeds with the horrified fascination of people witnessing a disaster they were powerless to prevent. "How many barriers has she bypassed?" Yeneth asked. 7, and she's injured no one, damaged nothing?" "Correct, sir. She helped that Ornithian actually, caught her before she hit the floor." Yeneth made a decision that would either save his career or end it spectacularly. He opened a station-wide channel, took a breath that his species used for calming their dual cardiovascular systems, and spoke with as much authority as he could project while hiding in a docking bay from someone who'd done nothing wrong. "All personnel, this is Director Yeneth. Stand down from evacuation protocols. I repeat, stand down. The situation is under control." The situation was absolutely not under control, but sometimes leadership meant lying with confidence. He switched to the direct channel with the human. "Ambassador Participant 847B, please proceed to Administrative Center A. Someone will meet you there to explain the situation." Finally, the human's voice came back tinged with relief and mild frustration. "I've been trying to find someone for 20 minutes. Is everyone okay?" That person who fainted seemed really distressed. "Everyone is fine. Please just head to Admin A. We'll explain everything." Yeneth looked at Hekth, who'd been silent through most of this disaster, processing everything with the methodical thinking their species was known for. "Go take a medical team in case she's somehow injured despite all evidence to the contrary. And Hekth, be honest about what happened. You want me to tell her we evacuated the entire station because our AI got scared? Can you think of a better explanation?" Hekth could not. 10 minutes later, in Administrative Center A, the human sat across from Hekth and a hastily assembled diplomatic team, holding a beverage that was supposed to be universally calming but mostly tasted like disappointment. She'd listened to their explanation with patience that suggested either remarkable emotional control or the kind of tolerance that came from dealing with bureaucratic incompetence regularly. "So your security system thought I was dangerous because humans evolved on a high-gravity world with active weather patterns," she said, summarizing what had taken them 5 minutes to explain with excessive apologetic language. "Essentially, yes," Hekth confirmed. "The AI classified your homeworld as what we term a deathworld, planets with environmental conditions that exceed safety parameters for most Concordat species, and the rock. The AI interpreted it as a weapon. Your species has a documented history of tool use dating back millions of years. The system calculated the kinetic force you could generate, throwing that rock, and determined it exceeded lethal thresholds for 42 member species." The human looked at him with an expression the translator struggled to categorize before settling on bemused disbelief. "I wasn't going to throw it. I was looking at the crystals. It was pretty. We understand that now. Your entire security system went into crisis mode because I picked up a pretty rock." "When you phrase it that way, it does sound excessive," Hekth admitted, which was the Valorian equivalent of saying they'd overreacted spectacularly and would be filing incident reports for the next 6 months. The human set down her disappointing beverage and leaned back in her chair, and even that simple gesture made the medical team tense slightly because her casual movements suggested muscle control
that most species achieved only through dedicated training. What happens now? Now, Yeneths, entering the room with the tired authority of someone whose adequate career had just become extremely interesting. We recalibrate our entire threat assessment system, issue formal apologies to you and your government, and possibly redesign our security protocols from the ground up, because they're scared of humans, because they're scared of everything, apparently, and we never noticed until someone capable of basic competence arrived and broke every assumption we had about safety. The human actually laughed, which was a sound the Valorians present would later describe as surprisingly pleasant, despite coming from a species that could theoretically bite through their exoskeletons. You know what's funny? Back home, I'm considered pretty average, not athletic, not particularly strong. I work in archives, studying cultural artifacts. My most dangerous skill is cataloging historical documents slightly faster than my colleagues. The room absorbed this information in silence. You're average for your species, Hecth repeated slowly. Completely average. And your athletes, your soldiers, your physically exceptional individuals. The human's smile showed teeth again, and this time everyone understood it was genuine amusement rather than threat display, though the distinction didn't make it less unsettling. You really don't want to meet our Olympic athletes, or our military personnel, or honestly our kindergarten teachers, because those people have reflexes that would probably make your AI invent entirely new threat category. 3 weeks later, the Galactic Concordat Central Council convened an emergency session to address what they were carefully calling the Human Compatibility Assessment. The full report from Epsilon-7 had circulated through every major governmental body, causing reactions that ranged from concern to fascination to outright disbelief. The humans, for their part, found the entire situation hilarious. Their diplomatic corps had sent an official response that was professionally apologetic, while clearly trying not to laugh at the galactic community's collective overreaction. They'd offered to provide more detailed information about human capabilities, limitations, and the fact that most humans spent their days doing boring jobs and worrying about mundane problems rather than conquering anything. The Concordat accepted this offer with the enthusiasm of people who'd just realized they'd been living in a bubble of safety so complete they'd forgotten what actual danger looked like. Earth's official classification was updated in the Concordat data. Instead of pending review, it now read, Class 7 Deathworld, Extreme Diplomatic Hazard, Unpredictable Competence. Below that, someone had added a note in the comments section that would become legendary across diplomatic channels. Species demonstrates alarming capability to solve problems through basic reasoning and literacy. Approach with caution and working door lock. On Epsilon-7, life returned to adequate normalcy, though the staff now had stories that would entertain their families for generations. The botanical deck removed all manual override access panels, then reinstated them after someone pointed out that was a safety violation. They compromised by adding signs that read, Emergency override, for emergencies only, please do not use if you are just locked in during a drill. The decorative rock remained in its display, though it now had a small plaque beneath it reading Basalt sample from Theta Verdis, not a weapon. Please enjoy visually only. And in the station's newly updated security protocols, there was a fresh section titled, Procedures for Deathworld Species Visitors, that basically amounted to, assume competence, not malice. Verify actual threats before initiating evacuation. Remember that beings who evolved in difficult environments might find our safety concerns adorable. Director Yeneth kept his job, mostly because the alternative was explaining to a replacement why their most advanced security systems had been outsmarted by someone reading instruction labels. He filed the incident report under learning experience, which was technically true, though it failed to capture the existential crisis the entire station had experienced. The human xenoanthropologist, whose name was recorded in official documents but who would forever be remembered by Epsilon-7 staff simply as the Rock Incident Human, completed her diplomatic exchange program with distinction. She wrote a paper about the experience titled, Threat Assessment Bias in Post-Scarcity Civilizations, that became required reading in xeno-diplomacy programs across human space. Her conclusion, delivered with academic precision and barely concealed amusement, noted that civilizations, which evolved without significant environmental pressures, developed sophisticated technologies, but sometimes forgot that sophistication wasn't the same as wisdom. They built amazing systems that could predict everything except the possibility that someone might just be normal, competent, and completely harmless despite coming from a world where survival required being neither fragile nor oblivious. The Concordat, to their credit, took this lesson serious. They revised their protocols, updated their AI training data, and generally tried to be less jumpy about species who could walk upstairs without getting winded. But late at night in the quiet spaces between shift station personnel across the Concordat would sometimes gather and tell stories about the day humanity arrived carrying rocks and reasonable expectations, and everyone else realized that maybe, just maybe, they'd been living in the safe, most boring corner of the galaxy. For so long they'd forgotten what actual capability looked like. And somewhere on Earth, in an archive building where the gravity was normal, and the weather was just weather, an average human woman filed reports about her trip to the stars and smiled every time she passed the decorative rocks in the lobby, because some stories were too good not to remember. The galaxy, as it turned out, was full of wonders. Humans were just one more, though perhaps slightly more competent at opening doors than anyone had expected.